It's open forum this hour and next here on Catholic Answers. Your call, your question is very welcome, whether you're Catholic or not. 888-318-7884. John in Oklahoma up next. John, thank you very much for the call. Go ahead with your question.
One of the most troubling things that I've seen, perhaps in my life, was the incident with the Pachamama statue in the Vatican Gardens, where there appeared to be worship offered to that wooden, idol or statue, whatever you wish to call it, in the presence of the Pope and cardinals. I've never heard an adequate or even a basic defense of that. Do you have any idea what their justification for that kind of thing was? Thank you.
Well, first of all, caller, I want to thank you for calling in. And I cannot tell you how happy I am, how exuberant I am that you called in this day when Father Hellnaw is on Catholic Answers answering the questions. Because not long ago, another caller called in when Jimmy Aiken was here, and Jimmy Aiken unfortunately misled that man with some Catholic establishment lie-a-loop answer. Lie-a-loops. If you never heard of the term lie-a-loop, it means exactly how it sounds. You're lying in loops, and you're going through loops of lie. And that's what Jimmy did, unfortunately. So I want to take some time here and correct Jimmy. And by the way of correcting Jimmy, I'm going to answer your question. Now, the first thing that Jimmy did was lie by saying that the Pachamama idol is not an idol, but a statue. He called it, it's not an idol, it's a statue. That's like calling Bruce Jenner a woman. Just because you change your name or put on some different clothes, it doesn't change what a thing is. And if you want to know what a thing is, sir, you just have to follow the Aristotle method of scientific observation. Aristotle said this, sir, that if you observe a thing long enough, that thing will tell you what it is. For example, if you observe a fruit tree for a few years, eventually that tree will produce its fruit. You'll know what it is. Same way, if you observe Bruce Jenner long enough, sir, you'll see him stand up at a urinal and take a leak. He's not always going to sit down because he's a man. He's even going to piss in a sink because that's what nearly all men do at some point in time in their life. And women, always make sure that you wash your kitchen sink because men are nasty when you're not around. They piss in the sink. And that's how things work. Things tell you what they are and things do what they do. It doesn't take a whole lot of work. Now, let's practice the scientific method together. And let's watch and see what happens here. Do me a favor and put some images up as I speak so I can put images to words. So, if you recall, the first thing we saw at this Pachamama worship celebration was we saw a woman witch doctor as some pagans start dancing, singing around two large wooden idols, or statues as Jimmy calls them, of pregnant false gods and many similar other wood carvings that were smaller. They began dancing around in the little false gods. So the stage was set for worship. This is clearly, if you observe it long enough, this is some sort of intentional rite taking place here. It would be like altar boys setting up the sanctuary with candles and lighting them, setting up a credence table, putting a cloth on an altar rail. Everyone who's there watching the altar boys do that would all say in unison or think in unison that, some form of worship is about to take place here, and it was. The next thing we observe in the picture is the witch doctor approached the Pope and give him a coconut cup with some sort of liquid to touch while another Indian presented the Pachamama statue to him. Then another participant placed an indigenous necklace around the Pope's neck. Again, in every ritual there are opening rites, where those who are there to worship signal their participation in that worship. For Catholics, it's the sign of the cross. The sign of participating in the ritual is our sign of the cross. That's how we begin our liturgy. Signing ourselves of how we began our faith journey signals that we are about to begin again the journey of our faith through the liturgy. Muslims, as you know, they raise their hands to their ears and say, Allahu Akbar. Indians invite their false gods by name and give them seats and wash their feet. What did these pagans do? Clearly, they present in their worship, right? They present a coconut cup of liquid. They present their god to be worshipped and place a cursed necklace around the neck of the participants. If you observe it, you'll see it's not hard, sir. Just observe it. This is worship. We're not going to play these games. Now, that opening rite now that's been concluded, the ritual now begins, just as the liturgy begins. And that is what we see in these pictures, with the pagan faith petitioners engaged in ritual dance around idols placed on a round cloth, kneel before them, and they make a clear act of adoration and bowing down to the deities and prostrating themselves. Then, for the concluding rite, they imposed upon Pope Francis to take some sort of cursed dirt to plant the cursed tree on the ground of the Vatican so that this cursed tree can now spread its cursed roots. This is a damn shame. See, let me do this, sir, and make this more simple for you. I'm going to simplify all this for you, caller, so that you will no longer have to be confused about this. When I was a young boy, Ray Charles, when he was still alive, God rest his soul, he and I became good friends when I was in college. I went to St. Augustine University in St. Augustine, Florida, but I worked at the Florida School of the Deaf or the Blind with Ray Charles. He went to school there when he was a boy. And so, he returned quite often there. He spent time with the kids, and, Ray and I became close. So, one day, Ray and I, we're going out for lunch, and, I'm driving, and, he's talking. We have a good conversation. All of a sudden, Ray reaches over and says, "Elohim, stop!" And, I wasn't a priest back then, so, Ray always called me by my first name and my middle name for some reason. I don't know why. My parents named me Elohim Amar, which means God said. So, a lot of people don't know this, that my whole name is God said Hellnaw. God said Hellnaw, Elohim Amar. So, anyway, I smashed on the brakes. And I wasn't going too fast, but it was stalled enough. And I said, "Ray, what's wrong, Ray? What's going on?" And he said, "You're about to run over those ducks." And I look up, and lo and behold, it was a school of ducks I was about to run over. But then I said, "Hold on, Ray, what's going on, Ray? You've had a coma all your life, Ray, damn about." And he said, "How you know there was some ducks coming, Ray?" And he said, "You don't need all your senses to know those are some damn ducks coming." And Ray was right. Right as a teaspoon of garlic and a pot of boudin noir. Just as it is. Just as it is here. You don't need to hear what's going on. You don't need to smell it. You don't need to taste it. Feel it to know that was demonic pagan Pachamama worship. Now remember, when Jimmy Aiken was asked this question, this is the moment, sir, caller, if you remember, when he reached the height side of his lie loop. Boy, and I had to say that moment, boy, that boy red hair must have lost some weight that day jumping through all them hoops. He must have went from 300 to 200 pounds. Last time I saw someone lie through these many loops is, well, whenever I watched that lady at the White House, Korean Jean-Pierre, whenever she gives a White House briefing, that woman has more lies in her than sodium hydroxide. And if you don't know why that's funny, you probably didn't do too well in your SAT. You probably got a 900, and shame on your parents for raising a dummy. Now Jimmy Aiken wanted to tell us that these Amazonians, he says they did worship Mother Earth back in the Amazon. There was a Mother Earth god, as he says. He says, but the image they use is different than the image brought to the Vatican. Boy, that's like saying that the golden calf that the Israelites created when Moses gone looked different than the golden calves that the non-Jewish, that the foreigner pagans worship. Therefore, it's not the same. Oh, that's a weird lie loop. That's weird. Because he also said that those people who worship the different image of Pachamama were not Catholic. Well, therefore then follows that these Catholics who are like many of the third world people and the uneducated Catholics throughout the world, you know how they blend their Catholic religion in with the pagan indigenous religion. Of course, they would have a slightly more Catholic-looking pagan Mother Earth. Of course. So Jimmy Aiken, he lies on himself. He proves himself wrong by what he says. So we see this in other Catholic places like Haiti and in Mexico and some Catholics in some African countries, how they blend their African traditional religions with Catholicism. So that was just a lie loop again. Here was another lie loop that Jimmy told when he tried to tell the poor caller that it was okay for them to have a statue of representation of Mother Earth because it was just a symbol of Mother Earth, not the real Mother Earth. But he failed to address the central point of the problem. The error is what he failed to address, and it's this: that there is an error of creating rituals and ceremonies and adoration and worship rites of symbols. Catholics do not worship symbols. That's a type of witchcraft. So even if it was a symbol, it should not have been worshipped at the Vatican. Next lie loop. Jimmy was told, he was saying, in his Jimmy voice, is common to assign personage to things. Mother Earth was just a personification of the planet we live on. Like Father Time is a personification, but not a real person that we believe in. Boy, this redhead went on to compare how the Old Testament calls wisdom a person, but wisdom was never thought to be a person. Wisdom was just a personification. But again, he failed to address the central error of personifying a non-person to the degree that we have created rituals and ceremonies and sacramentals and idols that we adore. You don't do that as Catholics, and you don't do that. The Vatican and the Pope should not have done that himself. All these lie loops. You see, this is how Satan speaks. I'm not calling Jimmy Aiken Satan, but I am saying, Jimmy Aiken, get thee behind me. You are not going to keep mixing truth with lie loops and call it a Krispy Kreme donut. It's not sweet. It smells like crap. We can see it coming from a mile away, Jimmy. And Jimmy, you should be ashamed of yourself. Having red hair but turning yellow when confronting an uncomfortable reality. Shame on you. And shame on anyone who can't tell the truth when the truth will cost you something. Oh, y'all done got Father Hellnaw riled up. Now, caller, I've been hard on Jimmy. And I should also be a little bit hard on the Pope as well, because he was there. And Jimmy won. Right? But I'm not going to condemn the Pope here. I don't know the Pope, never met him. I don't know if he's repented of his participation in this evil or not. Right? Sometimes what I do know is that you can surround yourself with bad people like Pope Francis has. That's all we see around him, bunch of sodomites and boy lovers. Right? And I do know this, that if you surround yourself with bad people will consistently lead you into trick bags, right? You always have to watch the people in your life. You always have to be ready to be prayed up and filled with the Holy Spirit so that you can always say no to Satan. But what I am saying, caller, is that God said hell no. Specifically, God said, thou shalt not make any graven images or likenesses of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in earth below, or that is in the water underneath the sea. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. And that includes Pachamama. I hope that answers your question.
John, thank you very, very much for that question. It's a while since we've had a Pachamama question, and I appreciate it. Let's go to Dallas, Texas. Binto is listening on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Binto, thank you for the call. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call, Father Hellnaw. I'm having a problem where my wife thinks it's okay for our daughter to go to Mass wearing leggings. And I find that to be inappropriate. And I'm wondering, what should I do? What type of conversation should I have with her to explain to her what's appropriate dress for girls at Mass?
Oh, hell no.